It was just like when the kindergartner sees their teacher in the grocery store and their brain can't even comprehend, like, I thought you lived in the school. Like, that kind of moment was for me seeing my wife walk towards me and then seeing all my kids run around her and come and hug me and my parents. It was just like, what is happening here? What's going on, everybody, and welcome to, is this an emergency? I guess it's like more than a week since it happened, but we were going to record this after the Maah Daah Hey 100 finished at the finish line. That did not happen. That was not a realistic goal of ours. So here we are a week later, and the reason that we're still doing this is I got 3 phone calls this week from friends who don't use social media and who only follow through either the podcast or through YouTube, and they were genuinely concerned about me and what had happened in the race because they were waiting for this podcast to come out and it hadn't. So here we are. I'm JP. Derek Wallace is here. He was my riding buddy for the day at the Maah Daah Hey 100, and then the co-DP or the director of photography for this year, because I obviously couldn't direct the film myself, but Aaron Haugen is here to take over as host for this podcast. So welcome, boys, and Aaron, take it away however you want to do this.
Yeah, so the realistic expectation of us doing this Saturday night was, like, if I could have had a camera on when I delivered whatever fast food I brought you Saturday night, like, you opened your hotel door and it was like death. And I was like, oh, okay, no, we're not recording a pod tonight. So here we go. We've got, I don't know, a dozen or so questions. We'll try to group them into and get through a bunch of things here and talk about the day for the most part. So let's talk about, like, going into the day last week. Like, let's talk about your race results and then kind of what expectations both of you had going into the day.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one. Our result was fairly simple. We finished 18th and 19th in 12:07, 30 something. So that was, for me, that was an hour and a half faster than I had done the race prior. And for Derek, it was like almost 3 hours slower than he did it a year ago. So it was a varied day. Probably the best way I can sum up how the day went for us. The race starts up this switchback climb called Never Ending Switchbacks, and about right after Never Ending Switchbacks, forever we have gone straight on that course, and because of a public landowner saying the race can't come through here anymore, we had to hang a left at a water cache up there and go on gravel for 10 miles. And Derek and I were in 18th and 19th place when we took that. Did I say right? I meant left at that water cache box. And we had said the gravel dads are going to come out and go ham on this road, and we need to just ride like at 200 watts, I think is what we said. So we rode right around 200 watts, and we got passed by trains of people, and we finished the gravel section 10 miles later, going into Bennett Campground in 37th and 38th. And then by the end of the race, we had kind of clawed our way back to where we started at the top of Never Ending. So that's kind of how the day went. It was very much a measured effort. We weren't trying to be stupid. Our main goal was to finish and not hit the ground at any point. And I flirted with that once, but somehow landed on my feet. And otherwise, it was a pretty... It was like a very event-free day, which is really weird on the Maah Daah Hey.
All right. Going into the day, what was your biggest concerns? And Derek, we'll start with you on this one. Like, how did your experience play in? Because I think you had said this was your 6th or 7th time maybe riding. So, like, what were your biggest concerns coming into the day? And then maybe like Thursday and Friday when we got out there, like after seeing the track, then like did those concerns change, or how did that play out?
I guess I'll start with that. So my concerns, I didn't really have any going into it. And I told JP at the starting line, this is the most stress-free day at the Maah Daah Hey that I'd ever had, because I was going to ride with a friend. There was really no pressure on me other than just being there with JP. And soaking up the day. So it wasn't. I didn't have a lot of stress going into it. But how about you,
How about you,
JP?
John?
Yeah, I didn't feel a lot of stress. The even for me, all the stress came in the week before it with the production. Like, I had a full crew that I was still in charge of, kind of, because I'm the one who draws up the plans and I'm the one who has to talk everybody through what they're doing. And Aaron, I think it was on Wednesday when we finally finished the like master run sheet for everybody.
Yeah.
And I said to you, I just cannot wait to get to the starting line when all I have to do is think about riding in this bike race and I can fully turn everything over and not worry about it anymore. And that was true. Like, I got to the starting line and Derek was there and I was like, okay, like, let's go do this thing that both of us are really prepared to do. And I don't have to think about anything else for however long it takes us to do this. This is all I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's funny because I think at least twice during the week when I was texting your wife, there was a couple times where I said, "We just got to get them to the start line," and I was like, "We just there was a couple things," and part of it was that we knew that they were coming, and so that was part of us wanting to get you started. But so throughout the day, then let's talk about so Thomas and Gordon when they rode the race last year for the first time, they talked about like it's basically a 8 to 12 hour problem solve, and the weather plays a huge factor, obviously, in what that looks like. So like, what went well throughout the day? What went wrong? And then how did you problem solve like some of those issues? And we'll start with you, John, in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two when you talk when especially when Gordon talks about problem solving, there's like the micro level of the immediacy of the trail in front of you, where you're coming up a switchback and all of a sudden, like the rut where the water has been running, you have to figure out on the switchback how you're going to cross that and go over to the other side and keep momentum. Or you're coming down descent and all of a sudden you realize the trail is going to be deeper in the ground than your pedals are, and figuring out which side everybody's been hopping up on to ride on, and then blindly trying to like hope that there's not a sagebrush stump sticking out or something that's going to take you down. So that's like on a micro level, it never stops. It's part of the reason the race is very mentally taxing, because the trail, Gordon also says, well, you can't trust the trail. And he's right. Like you're just constantly trying to figure out what it's giving to you, which this year I found fun. I don't know if that's the right word, but I found it fun, of this constant just like watching and scanning and being like, oh, we're going to have to do this now. And especially with all the creeks were high. So can we cross this creek, or am I going to worry about keeping my bike dry? And you could, if you were watching Derek and I like from above, you would see we took very different strategies at the creeks, as I was like, keep the bike dry at all costs. And Derek came in like a freaking monster truck every time. And sometimes he came through and would shoot 20 yards in front of me coming out. And sometimes he literally got stuck in the creek. And so that's one kind of problem solving. The other kind of problem solving is this idea of you start to overheat at mile 40 and you're in the shade while it's happening, and you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, if I overheat right now, the race, it could be over. And how are we going to problem solve this and work through it? And for me, that became, I always had a single bottle of water that didn't have mix or sugar or anything in it. And I just started using that bottle instead of drinking it. I just would pour it on me like all over, legs, crotch, arms, chest, back, to basically make my body sweat. Because I was like, well, if my body's not going to sweat right now, I'm going to make it sweat. And eventually like would bring myself back out of it. So there's those kind of problem solving things too. Or if you get to aid 2 and your SAG team, which is also your film crew, has been like scattered to the wind because of timing, and nobody's there except for the main cameraman, and there's just a cooler sitting on the ground. Derek and I very quickly figured out like, okay, cool, like we can do this, and we got it all sorted, mostly. So yeah, that like throughout the day we were dealing with that kind of stuff all the time. And I found it really, like I said, I found it fun. And probably that's because I didn't go super in over my head with my fitness during the race. And I also didn't ever hit the ground. So when you're not worrying about like, well, I blew up and now I've got to manage it. And I also didn't ever hit the ground, you can focus wholly on those other things. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well. For me, like JP mentioned, I went into it a little differently with the water crossings. And I'm kind of high maintenance and I don't like to get my feet wet if I don't have to. So that was kind of the game in the beginning, was just see how long I could go without getting my feet wet. And then eventually, yes, one swallowed me and the feet were wet. But the rest of the day, as far as problem solving, yeah, everything you said. And then for me, it was just trying to be there and support you in whichever way. And I was very vocal about that from the beginning and throughout the whole day. Like, what do you need from me? Is there anything I can do? Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, and going into it how we did with not having, like, we're going to hit this time frame. We're going to, for sure, we want to get this place. There was no pressure in it that way. So it was a very different, more relaxed way of going into it. So when those little problems did come up, it didn't feel like there was a ton of pressure behind it. It was like kind of like a game, just problem solving all day long with little things. And yeah.
Well,
So
sorry, Aaron, and a big reason we didn't have like a time goal or a place or anything. Although we had talked about some time goals behind the scenes and we had a run sheet based on certain time goals, my number one goal was, okay, we're filming a movie. Like, I have to finish.
Right.
And so we were like, and we have the same coach, Adam Saban is our coach, and I had talked with him about, Derek's not going to be the limiting factor here physically. He's a far better rider than I am. And so how fast can we go? And we basically set some wattage ceilings or some heart rate ceilings. And then we just stuck to those because the goal was to get across the finish line and not necessarily, be in the thick of it and then see what happens. Because that's a terrible movie if like it's taken me 6 years to get back here and then I blow up at mile 50 and have to limp home and I don't finish at check I, nobody
Yeah,
wants to watch that.
we wanted this to be an improvement upon the last time you were there. So that was
Yes.
the goal behind the whole thing, was just let's make this as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
yeah, and largely it was. So, you guys mentioned the river a little bit. So the river was really high, and like water fluctuates a lot out in the Badlands of Western North
Yeah.
Dakota. And so, like last year when we were filming, we took two vehicles and just drove right across the river, and it was like my hose kind of running outside in my yard. And this year, like we drove up to the river Friday morning when we were doing some pre-shooting and pre-riding stuff, and you look at it and it's like that's a legit river. And having been one of the people who walked across it, like it was well above my knees Friday. Saturday it was lower, but
Yeah.
it still was the right call probably to go around. So let's talk about um, like how that affected the SAG crew, and then if it did, how it affected your guys' day.
Yeah. I don't know that it affected us at all. Like we going in had said we're taking stuff at aid 1 and we're going to not take anything again till aid 2. And that was a plan well before we knew we were going to have to drive around. And so and for people that are, you know, people are like, "Oh, I have to leave from the start and get to aid 2." No, you don't. It takes 2 hours exactly to drive from aid 1 to aid 2 the long way. And so that's what we did. And we didn't have any issues. Matthew was there. The only reason he wasn't there when we arrived was our trackers were showing us farther away than we were. And he was trying to get ahead and run you and Levi up the hill to where you needed to film from. And so, but it all worked out. And then the rest of the day, we skipped D. We didn't take anything at D. We took stuff at E because we knew we were going to have to. And then the whole rest of the day, the crew was back together again. all the way to Medora. And so I didn't feel like it really affected anything. And I crossed that river in 2019 when it was over 3 feet deep, and you had to hold on to a rope with one hand and carry your bike while you were trying to not get swept away where we crossed. So, like this year, it was like, well, this is, I mean, it's higher than normal, it's higher than last year, but I don't know, it was considerably doable. And even I saw videos by the next day that it looked like it did last year, where people were just driving no problem. So yeah, what were your thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, I don't feel like the river affected us any. The only difference was with the extra moisture days leading into it was all the smaller water crossings leading up to it. Like it was a much wetter first half of the race than previous years where we do the full race. So yeah, I don't think it really made a big difference either other than that. More wet, a little rougher, but
Yeah, talk a little more about that, Derek. So a lot is made for the SAG crews of like the river's high, you got to go around, or the river's low, you can drive through it or over it, whatever.
mm-hmm.
But like, so like from my point of view, having never ridden, obviously, like it's a big deal to go around. Is the river crossing less of a big deal because of how many other creek beds you're going through anyways? Like in my mind, I think the creek beds are like a hidden underrated like challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
totally. And I talked to JP about that. The first time I went out there, I mentioned earlier how I'm kind of high maintenance. I brought a spare pair of socks,
Yes.
and I got to what I thought was the river crossing, and it was just one of those stupid little creek crossings. So then I got to the river, and I didn't have any spare socks. So yeah, everybody talks about the river, but you're going to cross 6 other water holes where you're getting almost as wet. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a backcountry race. You're going to get wet. You're going to get dirty. It's just part of the fun.
All right. So besides like the obvious moral support, Derek, like what role was yours throughout the day? Like, did it involve pace setting? Did it involve gates? I think also like if people have watched JP's videos, like they know the gates are a big deal, and
Totally.
they should
But I
because
think I think I made too big a deal out of it. Like we
yeah,
talked about this on the
yeah,
trail. I make it sound in the videos like there's 100 of them, and
yeah,
I
but
don't know,
how many are there? How many are there, JP?
maybe 20.
I would say
No,
I would
no
say
way,
40
dude.
closer.
There's closer to 40.
Well,
Yeah,
well, we're gonna
My
see because
right
I got the
arm was telling
POV
me that
footage.
true,
anyways at the end.
true. All right, so Derek, talk about your day, like your role, pace setting, gates, etc.
Yeah, so we started the day off with we would just rotate at gates. And me pacing was part of the thing, but it's tough for me to know when being up in front, like, hey, is this good? You know what I mean? I would try to go consistently, but you never know what the other person is feeling behind you. So what milepost were we at when we finally, I just asked, do you want to continue to lead? It was like
It was
30 miles in or
between
so.
no, it was between D and E
Okay.
because on the footage that I've looked through, that's where you quit leading, and so it was we came through D where you go past Teddy Roosevelt's old ranch in Elkhorn, and we did that climb out, and there was I think even still past where we crossed you guys a little bit later, like that next oil road, Aaron.
Yeah.
We were still taking turns, and partly there was a guy with us, and it was kind of like confusing to tell him like not to. Well, Derek's not going to lead, but I am, and like, but whenever we dropped him, then you said at the next gate, "Do you just want to stay in front?" And I said, "Yeah."
Right.
And I did that. I talked about this. My race recap on YouTube is out. You can go watch it. It just a short, like 10, 12 minutes about this. But for me, it was as much about pacing as sight lines. And I haven't talked like real public about this till the race recap video. But when I was in that accident in 2023, when my head hit that tree, my depth perception, went off into the ether or the universe, never to be seen again. And I don't have depth perception anymore. I didn't have very much to begin with because I have lazy eye, but I have none now. And so trying to follow someone and see the ruts and see like the snake holes and see like everything you're trying to take in was just really challenging. And when he said, "Do you want to just lead all the time?" Partly I felt good by that point, but also I was like, "Oh, thank God!" Like I just want to be able to see, and I knew also by that point Derek was quite content with my like I brake check really hard coming into blind right-handers because I only have one eye with my lazy eye. I only have one eye that works when I turn that way, and so when you only have one eye and no depth perception, you know, it's risky business out there on a tight right high up on a butte. So he was used to my brake checking though by that point. And so I was like, okay, we're good. Like I can ride my pace. I feel good. And he wants to do this. So I'll hand it back over to you, Derek, and you can tell what the next decision in that I'm going to let JP lead all the time.
Yeah, so JP's leading. I didn't follow all of his lines. Followed some though. And yeah, it was just hanging out, encouraging. At one point, I noticed he probably wasn't feeling as hot. So then I had offered to jump around and open a gate. And it was kind of from that moment on that I became the gate boy, which was totally cool. Because the Maah Daah Hey, riding the Maah Daah Hey no matter what, like, don't get me wrong, I was pooped at the end of this because it's a full day on the bike, no matter how fast you're going. But yes, I turned into the gate boy, opening all, I don't know, we'll say 30 gates, JP. We'll meet in the middle. But doing that, but it just does save a person a ton of energy because every time you have to stop and you have to lift that thing, it's kind of a hit. So that kind of became my role in the second half of the day anyways, and I didn't mind at all. So,
and I was grateful.
Yeah, and it was super funny following JP. He would, if he did take a bad line, he would apologize. And I kept saying, "You don't have to apologize. You don't. I'm out here riding with a friend, man. This is totally cool. No problems at all." And I don't know, after the fourth or fifth time, I said, "Shut up. It's fine. I'm fine back here. You don't worry about me. This day is about you, and we're having a good time." So
that was early in the day. That was like we were still. There were 2 times where I was like, he said, like, "I've never heard you be upset." And I was like, I think he's genuinely upset right now. That was one of them. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stop apologizing. The other was soon after that. I think both these happened on Bennett Trail. We were on Bennett, and I like to give you a hard time that you took a wrong turn on the Bennett Trail many years ago in 2023. So we're on the Bennett Trail to get to the Maah Daah Hey after the gravel. And I said, right towards the end, I'm like, "Hey, Derek, have you ever been on this trail before?" And he just goes, "Yep. Are we going to be done with that now?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." But those are the only 2 times all day that I sensed like frustration or irritation from you. And yeah, once you told me like, "Hey, quit worrying about, your brake checking or quit worrying about where you're going. I'm just here, man. I'm not leaving. I'm along for the ride." Then that put me a lot at ease of like, okay, we're doing this. We're doing it together.
yeah, and just to be clear, at no point was I upset. I put my dad voice on a couple of times, but that was it. I was having a great time. It was awesome.
I think you guys talking the whole day, people need to, if they haven't watched last year's film, like when you do this ride with somebody else, like it changes the whole day. And like Derek, you
different.
essentially soloed it last year, which is insane to think about. And obviously, like to compare to this year, like your role is different. Obviously, the finish is different. Whatever. But like as the cameraman who's kind of off the beaten path for myself, like, and I can hear every rider come by, whether I'm like 600 feet above them or like 10 feet above them. And so there was one, I think it was right before check C, you guys were coming in and you're a ways out. And I hear one of you say like, "Oh, that guy was really huffing. I don't think he's going to finish." And I was like, huh, I think our guys are feeling all right now because they're judging others as they pass them.
Can I touch on that just for a second about riding this race together? So
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
was the first time I'd ever ridden this race with somebody else for the whole duration. There was a couple first or second year I maybe stuck with a group for the first 30 or 40 miles, but then it's always ended up being solo. If you are coming to do this event for the first time and it's you're going to finish, that's your only goal is to finish, doing it with a friend is totally the way to do it. Because while it took a couple more hours than it did last year, the day went so much faster and
Yeah.
was so much more fun because you just have somebody to chit chat with. And we didn't, like, I don't talk a lot, but just
I was
stupid little
definitely the
comments
Gordon
here
in
and
this
there.
relationship.
Totally. Yeah, but it helps a ton. And if you're, like I said, if you're going out to just finish and to have a good time, do it with a friend because it makes it so much more enjoyable than out there suffering by yourself.
Yeah, it.
Absolutely.
So there was a kid. I should quit saying kid. There's a guy that was in a pink jersey, and he stood out a ton because he was kind of back and forth with you guys throughout the day a little bit. And so I ended up like seeing him a bunch, and then his parents were sagging for him, and so I ended up talking to them at different spots. And anyways, he's just like he suffered by himself all day, and he was a first timer. He's from Rochester, and I like it was probably at it was probably at E, and I'm talking to his parents, and I'm like, and they had never sagged either, so that was a whole different story.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to them, and they're like, yeah, he's kind of suffering, but he's coming back. They already knew like he was behind whatever his goal was, and like he was so locked in that yeah. Anyways, it was I don't know how you do it by yourself, especially first time. That's
Yeah.
insane. Let's talk about and Derek. Yours, I don't know, they might be different than John, so I'll have you go first on this. But let's talk about your guys' high and low points for the day.
Highs. My high
It,
was, go ahead.
I was gonna say it can be fitness related, or it could be just euphoric type. Like I'm feeling good right now.
Sure. My high was once we hit the bike path. I got
Yeah,
full body chills. Just felt like we made it. We did this. And it was just an awesome feeling to hit that finishing stretch with a great friend. So that was my high. Low is towards the end, the last third, your wrist and grip just get hammered. And like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if you're getting it at the record pace or you're out there for 14 hours, your hands and everything will start to hurt no matter what. And that, yeah, that started to set in that last third or so. But all in all, can't complain about that.
For me, I had two kind of low points in the day. One was there's this like juniper and sagebrush tunnel you go through for a while between B and C. It's right before you get to Devil's Pass. In theory, it should be like the coolest point of the day, and I touched on already. Like I started overheating there, and I kind of freaked out because I didn't know how I was going to get to the finish line if I overheated before Devil's Pass, but I got it all together right and felt good again right before Devil's Pass. Was able to rip across that, and then that happened again coming out of the Valley of Death, and that time it hit like so hard and very suddenly. And you were up on a hill trying to film, and Ube was on the hill filming, and Levi was flying the drone. Like all the cameras like that existed were on us at that point, and I didn't want to get off and walk. And I was just like, I have to. I'm falling apart right now. And again, within 5 or 10 minutes of going through the motions of getting calories in and putting water on me, I felt fantastic. And we descended down past Elkhorn Ranch at and for me, the highs were all these like redemptive points in the trail that in 2019 were like the literal undoing of a man out on the Maah Daah Hey. The Valley of Death descent. I told Derek, like, I'm going to lead down that. And we had actually ridden it the day before. But part of the reason I wanted to lead it, aside from the sight piece, is just like I had these like huge demons of crashing there just horribly. And having another rider drive over me because they had no other line because it's such a sketchy descent. And so to make it through that clean, then I got to the valley and I felt good. And so I pushed, which might be why I fell apart coming out on the climb there. But And that descent down past Elkhorn, there was a point too where I told Derek, I'm like, this is where I crashed and then stood over my bike and like sobbed my eyes out in 2019 and wondered what I had got myself into. And like, you watch the video of us riding it as I'm telling him this, and I'm kind of like, bro, how did I crash there? Like, how did it go so sideways? And we made it look pretty easy, even like my goofy descending style. And so there was just those moments all through the day where I was like, yeah, we're doing it. And then obviously the finish line was a high for, you know, Declaration of Independence length list of reasons, but one of them was we just got there, and then you guys were there filming, and you're like my crew, and then as I finish like putting tears all over Derek's shoulder, I turn and my wife is standing there, and that was a complete surprise that they were coming to, like, I didn't know they were coming. They had lied to Derek about coming. And so it was just like when the kindergartner sees their teacher in the grocery store and their brain can't even comprehend, like, I thought you lived in the school. Like, that kind of moment was for me, seeing my wife walk towards me and then seeing all my kids run around her and come and hug me, and my parents. It was just like, what is happening here? That was a for sure high. And the other thing, that this was a really validating event for me, and not because we got the film done, but this is this is the event that I'm most connected with because of the films I've done, because of the work I've done, because of all the like how to do the race. So a lot of people have found me through the race, or they have found the race through me. And I had a lot of people come up to me and tell me crazy stories about how the podcast or the YouTube channel has really helped them, or in one case saved their life. So, very validating to be doing this work that, it's not the sexy get click YouTube work. This is like hard mental health and long-term long-term storytelling. And it doesn't always get the clicks, but it's affecting lives. And so that was really validating too. I'm terrible at coming up with a singular high, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. The day in itself, I mean,
Yeah.
that it's all encompassing. So you mentioned it, John, in your like race recap video that dropped this morning. That maybe there's a next time, and we'll see obviously what that looks like. Is there something you would change next time, whether it's racing, whether it's nutrition, like something with the riding the day before? Is there anything you would change if or when next time happens? And then Derek will go to you next.
I mean, this is what's terrible about like the human condition, or whatever we want to call it. Like, I don't know if we were even back to Pelican yet, and I was thinking about like how could we have gone faster? And on the one hand, I'm like, well, I don't know how I can go faster. But and then some of the things I'm just like, I don't know if I want to chase that. Like, I know I'm 15 pounds still overweight. It hasn't come off. I gained like 30 pounds after the accident. I've lost like half of it. I'm in my mid 40s. Weight doesn't come off the way it did in my 20s. So, there's those kind of things that I could chase. And I also think just like a year-long build-up versus basically 4 months of training would do wonders out there. But I don't know. I don't want to like dismiss what we did, because I think it's really special. Like, it's special that we got through clean. It's special that we went really fast on the second half. People that know the race that followed our trackers were like, we could tell you were going really fast on the second half, the way you were moving. And so there's just so much that I'm proud of that I don't know how to answer that right now. Even though I've thought a lot about it, I can't come up with a good answer. And Derek, maybe you feel differently.
Yeah. So riding it with you, I do see the trail in a different aspect, just because I got to focus on the trail more rather than just focusing on not blowing up like I've always done. So I've always been really pretty terrible at pacing. Last year was my best year with that, but yeah, I'm amped up and I'm going back for sure. And my focus is going to be just to nail my pacing. I feel like I've developed pretty well in all the other areas, have nutrition dialed. So the goal for next time I'm out there is just going to be go as fast as I can with pacing it the best I ever have, in hopes that that can help things go more smooth. So
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So next question that came in, John, this mostly applies to you, but Derek, maybe it's growing on you. We'll see. Maybe you're too big time, but John, are all the members of the crew actually your friends?
Yes, that is true. Uh, I think the funniest thing I heard all day or all weekend was when. So, Jesse Smith from the bicycle station, we spent a lot of time with him because he was working on a project with me and I was working on a project with him. Spoiler alert, he will be a character in the Lost Chapters that'll come out sometime in the future. But he had dinner with us. He and his wife and their child had dinner with us on Friday night. And at some point, I don't think I was still there, but you told me about it, Aaron. He asked you if how like you're in on the film crew. And I think one thing that gets misunderstood about my film crew, and this is the case, whether it's this movie or every single episode of the Chase Wark documentary series, when people see additional photography or they see additional cameramen, they take that as like, wow, these are professionals working with
Yeah,
JP.
yes.
There are no professionals working with me.
Levi's close.
Levi's close. Alex is close.
Yeah,
Maybe Ube. But
yeah.
yeah, like, and you told Jesse we are all independent contractors, which I just was like, oh my gosh, he just doesn't want to explain what's going on.
Yeah, that wasn't
All,
worth it.
all of you are my friends. Some of you, like Matthew, you, Carrie, Ube, are like so close with me. I work with Carrie every day. He's in my room every morning, you know. Alex and I go way back through him being a content creator basically for the soccer team that I coached. And he was actually a cameraman in 2020 when my mental health fell apart. And that is all part of a documentary series that he filmed and that I produced. But he was there. So, like, and I saw him respond to that and how he treated me through all that. And so he's kind of a, like, ride or die too, even if we don't spend a lot of time together. Levi got added in last year, last minute, and he fits the vibe of the group great. And then Derek was along for the ride this year too, because we were his ride to the race and throughout the whole thing and his SAG. So he fit right in. And so everybody in that, there's a picture I posted on Instagram, and I think it's been a thumbnail for a couple things too. Everybody in that picture is like legit friends and legit close with me, and also not professionals in the film world at all. But all of you are really high functioning and can be given a camera or something and said, here's what we're looking for. And so that's what you get. Yep.
Independent contractors.
Independent contractors. Yeah, that's my friends. They're all my
that was a
independent
really cool
contractors.
part for me too, was that something I wasn't expecting to get out of this trip was I feel like I became good friends with all of these independent contractors. Like,
Yes.
came out with friendships, and it was awesome. Everybody is super cool. Like you said, vibes are good all around. So that was something really positive that I got out of the whole weekend.
Yeah. Well, and I think like all of that can be summed up in how our aid station stops went. So Derek and I have obviously been around this race quite a bit. I've done it once. I've filmed it twice. You've raced it a bunch of times. We rolled into the first aid station, and we hadn't split the film crew yet because it's still aid one. So everybody's there, and we've got our 2 drivers helping us, and it was like nonchalant to the max in the best possible way. And we all got our stuff, and Derek and I were calm because we're not like in a crazy hurry, but we're just kind of moving. And we get out on the trail and we're like, man, that was maybe a little too chill. I don't remember exactly what we said, but I know we had a discussion about like there wasn't much urgency there.
Very
And
anticlimactic.
yeah, and I think one of us was like 0 for 1, and then of course because we didn't stop very much. We didn't see anyone until we crossed the river. So we get to the river and we're all excited to see the action. And like I said, we get there and nobody's there. It's just a cooler sitting on the ground. And at the end of that, Matthew eventually parks. He runs down the hill. We're kind of getting everything sorted. And I'm like, hey, I need a battery for my action camera. Because like Derek and I were filming the whole time too. And he's like, oh, I left it in the truck. So he's got to go run and get it. And it's like being at track practice again 15 years ago with you Haugen boys. And he tears up the hill. And Derek and I are kind of standing around and we're got everything ready. We're just waiting for this battery. We get the battery, put it in, and we turn to go. And Matthew's like, oh, John. And I go, what? And as I say what, I'm like turning and I go to put my foot down and there's just nothing there. And so I like tip over slow motion into this set of bushes, which Derek made a very like inappropriate comment that we all laughed really hard at. And then Matthew's just like, did you need your shoes? And I'm like, I already got them, man. And we got up and left. And so we're riding out and we're this time we were like, my word, 0 for 2. Let's see if we can get it at the next one. And from there on, E was the next time we saw everybody. And from there on, it was so dialed and back in. And we gave everybody a really hard time afterwards, like as friends would, but not there was no like yelling or vindictiveness in our voices or at any point. It was just like, oh, okay, like this is how it's going to be right now. And that's okay. So.
All right, I got one follow-up on the course, because you talked about the gravel section and
Yep.
having to go gravel a few miles into the race for a section. And I'm just curious, like, and you can say as much as you want to definitively, but like, is that a permanent change? How did that change strategy on your overall day? How did it change in that section? And then like, how does that affect total time? Like, is that a 5-minute change, or is it a 40-minute change, or who knows, because it was done once?
Yes. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the inner. To be careful. I can't share publicly what I know about how that gravel road ended up getting put in or not. What I can say is there are a handful of public landowners along the Maah Daah Hey route, and I believe that one who had allowed the course through for many years said no thanks anymore. And so at that point, Nick did a fantastic job of maintaining what I feel like is kind of the core of the race, in letting us still start at Triple C and go up Never Ending. Never Ending is a postcard moment on that course. There's a handful of postcard moments, but Never Ending is one of them. And Nick did a great job of figuring out how to incorporate that still into the race. Gravel, not ideal. However, there is nobody who finished in Medora who sat around and complained that they had to ride for 10 miles on gravel instead of 10 miles of single track. Because on the old route, it was a little over 1.5 miles on gravel that you went on, and then the rest was single track. And some of like the dodgiest single track on the whole trail. So did they go faster? I don't know. Hard to know.
Right.
What were your thoughts on that, Derek?
Yeah,
like as far as pacing and you can talk a little bit more about our strategy, when we hit the gravel, but
Yeah, so it's super easy to want to get on the gas when you get on gravel because it's easy pedaling, right? So you can get down, get aero, and put all the watts down. But with it being that early in the day, it's a kind of a recipe for disaster because you can burn up probably 4 or 5 matches there, and then really wish you had them at the last half of the day. So that was with our strategy going in was we're not going to jump on these trains even when they pat you on the back and say, "Come on, guys, jump on." We just let them roll on by. So, and as far as there being more gravel versus years past, JP's totally right, and it's the same as you'll get to the end of gravel races sometimes, and the directors will be concerned with how much pavement there is. You never complain when you get to ride something easier than the majority of the course. So, yeah, it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. And as far as the time goes, I feel like it's probably a wash or super close anyways within a couple minutes of last year's course.
Sure. So last question that got sent in, and it's to me. So we'll see how this goes.
well,
But basic.
I can ask this one to
Okay,
you,
you
Aaron.
you go ahead.
Yeah. So somebody asked, question for Aaron. This is your third Maah Daah Hey 100 you have documented. Independent contractor Aaron Haugen. Has it inspired you to put down the camera and pick up a bike and give this a try?
Short answer is no. Let's go long answer. So like for people who have listened for a long time on here, it's pretty well documented. I have a history out in Western North Dakota and like grew up going out there a ton, and not just like the Medora like sightseeing stuff, but like actually spending time out there, and still had no clue about like the bike race and the weekend involved. Um, and now like having done this 3 times, like I'm probably less inclined to ride because I've seen like the best and the worst of the ride and people blowing up. Like I would love to sit at, I think is it at E, and watch people walk up the whole day. And that was when like Thomas and Gordon were like
Yep.
yelling at me last year, like, you didn't see us walk, you didn't see us walk, and I'm just like shaking my head behind my camera. Um, I don't know. It like I have a hard time. I watched your race recap this morning when it came out, and like the chest cam footage is stuff I haven't seen a ton of before. I've watched a
Sure.
little bit here and there, and I look at it and I'm like, man, like how long would it take me to do the 13? And it's not like I don't do stuff because like I rode with each of my kids separately last night.
Yeah.
So like I was on the bike for an hour or whatever that was, but it's not the same. And
Yeah.
like the gravel and hills of Holly are different than the Maah Daah Hey.
No, for
So
sure. And even I think I talked a lot. I've talked a lot with Derek. I don't know where he went right now. He'll be back.
yeah,
Um, Derek and I have talked about how, and Jesse from Bicycle Station said this too. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you watch those movies, you don't understand what that trail is like. And you don't understand, it's not, what did he say? The trail isn't technical, the terrain is technical. And I thought that
sure.
was a good, like, summary of it, of just, this is really, it's a really hard race.
Well, and even like I was looking, I think it was this morning again. I was looking at times from Leadville this weekend, and which just shows like how far into it I am now at this point. But like I'm looking at times from Leadville, and we're looking at like 6 to 8 hours, and I'm like, man, like how easy is it? Like, and I know like it's the race, like it's the one that everyone's supposed to want to go do,
Yeah.
and yet like I look at it and I'm like, if you can do it in 6 hours, like I don't know, like 9 won it this year out in Maah Daah Hey, and it's like like the record whatever Kelly had was 8:18, and now they set a new record this year, which is great. Like, and I get it, it's a different course, but it's like, man, if it's a 9 hour record or whatever it happens to be, like I kind of prefer that personally. That's a
Yeah.
grinder, but
Yeah. No, it's just, it's such a different, it's why when you ask, like, how how can you go faster? I don't know.
Right.
Like, maybe I can't. Like,
It's
I
so
don't,
different next year too.
yeah, that's where I'm at. And,
Yeah.
and looking at things like, because of some other film stuff in the works that I can't really talk about yet, for me, potentially, um, for me, next year, the Maah Daah Hey is not on the table because I will presumably be somewhere else, potentially racing, which is great. But that means right now, when I think about the Maah Daah Hey, it's like 2 years down the road, and I'm like, okay, well, like, can I go faster in 2 years when I'm 45? And like, I don't know, who knows? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really hard race. And I was like so happy to go through it clean and fast and with a buddy. So one thing I know people, Aaron, are going to like be wanting to know, even though it's not really what we do on this show, they want to know about nutrition. They want to know about bike setup. And so a couple of those things. So I'm going to talk through that. Derek said he's trying to get back on. We'll see. Nutrition. Very simple on my end. I drank over the course of the day. I drank 3 gallons of Flow formulas. Got the shirt on today. And of course, you can use the code JohnPeter15 at checkout. But I drank 3 gallons of Flow formulas that like went into bottles and Useway packs throughout the day. I drank a Red Bull at every aid station, like at the aid station. And I had a pack of Flow Formula Chews that I stuck in my pocket, open at every aid station. And then Derek handed me a huge handful of Sour Patch Kids at aid 2. And that was it. That's all I did all day, just that. And that got me through. I think his stuff was a little different. And if he gets back on, I'll let him talk about that. I did, for my bike setup, the main thing people want to know, I ran 2.4 Dubnital tires from Continental. I ran Gulo composite wheels that I'm sponsored now or supported by Gulo Composites. And yeah, those are the main things. I put carbon bars on like a week ago, and that seemed to really help with the vibrations and all that. The only cramping I had all day was my right tricep cramped coming down a couple really long descents after Wanigan, I want to say, where Derek was saying, how are your arms doing? And I'm like, my tricep is so cramped right now. But otherwise, I didn't have any cramping. So yeah, it was a pretty clean day.
One thing while he's connecting too, like I think one thing that surprised him, having not been a part of what we do, obviously throughout the last few years, is like we rattle off like check ABC, aid 1, 2, 3, and all these things. And we're like, oh, after check 2, here's what we're gonna do, and blah blah blah. And like he had mentioned at some point this weekend, it might have been like early Friday morning when we were starting, like driving through the course, of like, I don't know any of this. Like I just ride and survive, and like if I happen to like stop somewhere and see somebody, that's great. Like pretty much everyone knows one again because you have to go in and you have to come out of it the same direction.
Well, you have a descent that could literally kill you, so everybody knows
Yeah,
one again.
correct. And but other than that, like, and I mean, aid 1, 2, and 3 are bigger stops, obviously, but like I think most riders even are like we started at 6 a.m. and I finished somewhere between 3 and 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And the day was a blur, which
No,
is like,
I felt like it was a huge advantage for me to know the course to the degree that I did.
mhm.
Um, and I'm not saying everybody needs to know it this way, but like I understand, like I said, like I knew, hey, there's a juniper forest and sagebrush before Devil's Pass. And then it's Devil's Pass. And then I knew that like we're going to cross a road, and I know that section from the road crossing to see by heart, and then we're gonna cross and go around Hammerhead Rock and descend down, and like like just the nerdery of what we do with the
Yeah.
film piece. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, thanks.
uh, was so advantageous, I felt like, during my day, especially in those dark moments, just the
Right.
couple that I had, where, like, even coming out of Valley of Death, I knew, okay, now we're going to ride next to the road for like 3/4 of a mile. And it's flat, and my only focus is not to hit the barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
And then I get to descend for like 10 minutes. And so just as the day went, and I like because of me and your planning this year, I was like, I know what oil road we just crossed, and it's
Yeah.
this many miles to the next. Like, that was so helpful to me personally, internally, that I knew the route to that degree. And that's really hard for people to necessarily, know. But it's also why I'm going to, starting in September, like once a week, I'm just going to post a section of the POV cam that I took and be like, here's the start to Bennett. Here's Bennett to Aid 1. Just so people can, like, just watch it on your trainer this summer and become a little more familiar and think about this race in the chunks rather than just like you said, like, well, I'm starting at 6 and I'll finish when I finish and I'll cross the river in the middle. Because I think you're right that a lot of people don't know it, and they don't even know how to necessarily research it. And like I said, I had a huge advantage because we did so much work on Google Earth Studio in 3D, because we were trying to model stuff for Levi and for the rest of the crew. But that was, for me, the big advantage I felt like I had throughout the day as I look back, is that I always knew where I was. Always.
Right. Right. Derek, we were talking like at some point Friday when we were driving everything, like you had mentioned like, man, I don't know any of these stops. Like I just ride the race and like so I had asked John like what's the advantage? Like he knows the course. Honestly, probably better than Nick. Like to a point. And Nick's ridden it a ton and obviously works on it during the summer and stuff. But like what what did you learn or what did you like take from Fridays like pre-drive, but also like hearing us just like talk through like, oh, here's at one again, and here's at aid two, and here's at this, and like just rattling off these names that like I told John like most riders can't do that other than probably one again and aid one.
Right. Yeah, I felt like an idiot because I've been out there 6 times, and JP knew every mile of the dang course. He's like, this is
Yeah,
where this happened, this is this shot, this is on and on and on the whole day, which is super impressive because, like I said, I've been out there. That was my 6th time, and it kind of all looks the same to me, and to a certain degree. There's those certain standout features that you see, and when you get to spots, you remember, oh yeah, I remember suffering here, and it gets super hot down here, and I think the aid station is over this hill, but yeah, JP is on a whole nother level as far as understanding the trail and knowing where every location is at. So yeah, but it was super interesting. That was the first time ever that I had ridden along on the whole sag route in the opposite direction. But to get to see that perspective was super eye-opening, and it makes you realize how much ground we're covering in a day on a bike across the Badlands. So it's pretty awesome that way too.
yeah. When you turn off, I think it's 85 to go back to check C. The first direction on the seg directions I think is 15 miles of gravel. And it's like, I looked at that Saturday morning we were driving. I was like, what, 15? It doesn't like, sometimes when we drive it backwards, I don't pay attention. And then I looked at the directions for Matthew and I was like, all right, go 15 miles. He's like, what? So, John, do you want to set him up for bike and nutrition?
Oh, yeah. So while we were waiting for you, I talked about what I did for nutrition for the day, and then I talked about my bike setup a little bit. I just mainly like tires, because people want to know about tires and all that. So
Totally. As far as bike goes, I'm on the new Spearfish, Salsa Spearfish. It's a 120 bike, and I was running the Terravale Camrocks. which is Terravale's XC tire. Much more aggressive as far as traction goes compared to a lot of the fast XC tires out there right now, but I feel a lot more confident going into races with a little more traction, even if it's not quite as fast. So that's what I was running for bike and tires. And then nutrition, I did primarily scratch in my pack, and then in my bottles, I was just running water. And then I did the first endurance gels, and I had a little timer on my Garmin that would go off every 45 minutes that just said eat. And then I would take either a first endurance gel, or I had the little honey stinger honey packets, and I'd take those. And then whenever we'd meet up with the aid stations, it was fill your throat with whatever goodies they had there. So I had some Sour Patch Kids. Wanigan had nerd clusters in their tent, so I hit those up. And then slammed a few Red Bulls.
He was like Gordon with the cookies last year.
They got
I
cookies.
love that stop. It is the best one of the day for sure. They've got good vibes and all the good snacks down there. But yeah, so I think I drank 3 Red Bulls and I don't know, 5 Cokes probably.
Yeah, you hit the Cokes hard.
I did. And that, I don't know, my gut training must be working because I felt fine all day.
Yeah. I don't know that I've felt fine since then. I think like I've messed up my gut biome a little bit, and I understand. I think you and I were talking how I was like, I understand why people fast for a few days and then like put probiotic back in.
Yeah.
And especially after this race I did yesterday, I kind of feel the same today. But yeah, it was. I want to hear about you. Have some kind of homemade concoction also that you had with, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like some kind of homemade drink
Well,
mix.
yeah, so it's, if I'm being totally transparent, it's not straight up scratch. I use another
Okay.
brand. Gosh, I feel bad because I can't even think of the name right now. Corsa, that's the name of the stuff. It's a high, I don't know, high sodium, high carb mix. So I do, but it's really, really strong if you do 90 to 100 grams of that in a bottle, and the scratch is a more mellow. So I would do 2 scoops of the Corsa and then top off with the scratch. So it was like a lime raspberry mix. But to get the pack to where I was consuming about 100 grams an hour was the goal with that. And then a little buffer with then having the gels on top of it.
I'm glad you like it, but it does not taste great.
I
And
think it's amazing, man.
at our last
So funny.
checkpoint at Check I, we like flew in and we were gone like really quick. And Howgard was there, and I understand why he got confused. One of my bottles was not sponsor correct, and it matched 2 of your bottles. So I ended up with one of your bottles on my bike. And we were going up the first climb after you go under the railroad and you're climbing out. And I took a huge swig and I just immediately spit it all out. I was like, what is this in my bottles? And I'm like, oh, I got one of Derek's. And he's like, that's my homemade stuff. So,
Yeah, and I did have 2 mixed. 2 of my big bottles were mixed for if I ran out of hydration in the packs. So that's
yeah,
why you were blessed with that.
well, it was all good. I knew like I would have freaked out if we were further out, but I was like, Max, we got like 40 minutes left. I can go deep here for a little bit if I need to. But I was going to tell you, Aaron, I didn't mention it earlier. One of my other highlights of the day, we come flying into Wanigan, and I'm like jacked. Like, man, we're coming to Wanigan, and we're feeling good, and I didn't almost crash on the corner like Thomas last year, and like we're solid. And Derek's over getting his nerd clusters, and I'm like at the truck, like I want to go fast and get going again because I feel great. And I look up, and all of a sudden, and this I also have to stress, we're at Wanigan. We are literally in the middle of nowhere. And out from behind the truck steps a coworker of mine,
Yes, that's right.
and he just goes, "Hey," and I'm like, and I uttered a loud expletive in the form of a question. And it was stuff like that again, where it was just validating of and I talk about it so much on the channel, right? About you build community. And some of the relationships are like what you guys are. Like you and Matthew and Carrie and Ube, like you're totally, and Derek, you are too. Like every day, text, every day, talk to you, like ride or die, right? But then you also, if you're intentional about building community, you have friendships that form, and sometimes you don't even know how important they are to the other person until they like step out from behind a truck in the middle of nowhere just to be like, good job, man. This is awesome. And we got up the hill and Derek was like, and also an expletive, who is that? And like, I just burst into tears and started crying. And I'm like, I can't even explain it right now. But like, just the realization of, yeah, I don't care if he's got a brother that lives in Belfield, which is, the next town to Medora, but like, you drove how far into the middle of nowhere to cheer me on? Like, what? And it's just be intentional about who you put around yourselves, because a lot of you guys, and I've shared this, when my mental health fell apart in 2020, and Derek, like, I didn't even know who you were yet at the time, right? You would become a later friend. But in 2020, when my mental health fell apart, there were so many people that I expected in that situation to be there who were not. And I had a lot of people who I never would have expected to be there who were. My boss at school, would not have expected him to be there. Had my back big time. A lot of the teachers at school, like, to the end, they'd go with me, right? And I wouldn't have expected that. And then I had you guys who were there. And honestly, it's kind of why I've shifted focus a lot to helping a different community, without getting into too much detail. But like, having friends like that was huge. And then just having that as I crawled my way out was so huge too. And so that's why I say go build community, put people around you. And you never know when you get into a tough spot when they'll have your back. And some won't, and that's okay. And one last story I wanted to tell. I know we're like over an hour on an emergency pod, but one last story I wanted to tell was about Dustin Juntanen. Dustin raced the Maah Daah Hey this weekend, and Dustin was a guy. So he was originally from Brainerd, Minnesota, and when I was first getting like barely fit, and my doctor had let me start riding bike after I'd been diagnosed with bipolar, and so this is like June of 2021. I went up to Detroit Mountain to race a Minnesota Series race, and it, like, I was in way over my head, but it went pretty good. And afterwards, I met this guy named Dustin, who is like super mountain bike guy, all vibes, the best. And he was just like, he was just stoked I was there. And he was like, all right, man, well, I'll see you at the next one. And in my head, I was like, well, I'm not going to go to a next one. Like, why would I do that? And the next one on the horizon was Mount Cato. And I was like, oh, that's a real climby course. I like climbing. And at that point, I had never really taken, like, now I travel by myself all the time, right? And I take these trips, and I'll sleep in my truck if I have to, or I'll sleep in a tent if I have to. But since my diagnosis, I hadn't really had any independence like that where I could prove to myself, like, you can do this, you can live life. And I was like, okay. And I had gotten a text message or two from Dustin saying, hey, man, are you going to be at Mount Cato, with like this emoji? Because that's who he is. And I was like, yeah, like, I think so. So I roll the dice on going to Mount Cato. And because I know there's somebody that, like, who wants me there, right? And I got second that day and rode freaking awesome. And all of a sudden, like all these feelings I used to have of confidence and just I can do things and I can go do cool shit, like that started to come back, right? And I had camped overnight in the Mankato City Park, which is kind of sketchy, just FYI. But I came back and I was like, okay, yeah, like let's go. And when he saw me at the race, he was so stoked I was there, right? And he was just like, yeah, man, like that was fun. You climb really good compared to me. And then he's like, okay, we're going to Duluth next week. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I went to Duluth like the week or two later and had a really good race there. And every time I went to the race, Dustin found me. He hung out. He wanted to know how I was doing. He did not care that I was this broken mess and I was trying to like put all the pieces back together. He just was happy to see me. We end up, I think he got fourth in the series that year, and I got second in the series for the whole year. And like we hung out at the end of the year at the big awards thing. Well, then he moved to Arkansas, to Bentonville. And like we would text each other here and there, but not a lot. And this past year, I started getting messages from him again, and he's like, hey, man, I watched the Maah Daah Hey films, and I'm coming to do it. And so he was there. He was there this past weekend. And I think when we were unloading on Friday night, you guys passed me and him talking like in the entryway there. And it was really good to see him and his wife. And of course, his like little tiny daughter is now like, you know, this middle schooler, and his dad was there. And like, I know that Dustin didn't have the greatest day because he had kind of a first experience with Maah Daah Hey, which means like it went really good till it went horrible. But like, I want to talk about him because often when I talk about the bike community is awesome, you know, and people outside the bike community be like, I don't know, like I've been to races and I just don't see it. And when I say the bike community is awesome, I'm talking about people like him who just made me feel welcome and special and like I was seen the first time I saw him. And like the first time I met Derek at a gravel race, it was just like, hey, dude, like Mark's talked about you, our friend Mark, who's mutual friends with all of us, right? Like, hey, like Mark's talked about you, like, cool, let's be friends, right? And so getting to see Dustin for me was like this loop closing off of like, I'm selling community so hard to everybody here who watches and listens to this because you showed it to me when I really needed someone to show it to me in this. And you probably weren't even trying to, right? But you just did it. And that's, you know, just be kind, right? Just be kind and nice. And like, you might be that person that lights a fire in somebody else to go do something awesome. And so I have no idea if Dustin is listening to this. I am going to message him, but like, yeah, man, you literally altered the course of my life just by being nice and cool at a bike race and not scaring me away when so much of the time we go to races and it's like really vulnerable experience. To have somebody just be like, yeah, dude, and I want to see you next time. Like that meant the world. And a ton of people's lives are being affected now by the work I'm doing because that guy said, I want to see you. And also, I'm sorry you had a terrible experience at the Maah Daah Hey, Derek. Or Dustin. He said to me afterwards, I saw him, he finished as we were leaving. And he said, I know you love the Maah Daah Hey, JP, but I think I'm one and done. So
He brings a friend next time, it might be different.
yeah. Well, next year is a long time from now, so.
That's correct.
Yeah. Anything else, boys?
I want to just touch on the community aspect real quick. So at the end of that, it just goes into everything that you're talking about. But at the end of that day, I don't know, it was the day or two later, I got a text from a friend, and all he said was, "You're a really good friend." And all he was saying was, "You're a good friend for going out there and doing this ride with JP," right? But that's all he said. You're a really good friend. And I thought about it for a little while, and I don't think I'm this really good friend. But when it comes down to it, you surround yourself with good people, and being a really good friend is super easy. And
Yeah.
it goes full circle for everybody. So it is huge to just surround yourself with good people, and it makes life so much easier.
Well, and I think that's why the independent contractors keep coming back. Right,
Totally.
Aaron?
Oh, amen. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's fun. It's fun, and it's like a weekend with your buddies. Like we all want to do that, and then we can watch the two of you suffer and go eat some B-dubs or something later. Like, what more could
Yeah,
you ask for?
right on. Well, this is awesome, guys. Thanks for doing this and chatting about our good times. For those that are wondering, you can go watch the race recap on YouTube right now. You can also, if you're wanting to get a fix, you can go watch Maah Daah Hey together or the Lost Chapters. Derek has a Lost Chapter that came out that kind of tells our story a little more. But if you're looking for the film Back to the Start that we just filmed, that's probably not going to come out till maybe February 1st or around then. It'll be a while, and then we'll have some premiere dates too. So I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer on that. I'm starting to work a lot more on the story now that we have the like race part done, and I get the feeling that you're gonna get to know Aaron and Matthew and Carrie and Ube and all these guys a lot more in that film than we maybe originally thought. So this has been awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I love you both. And for all of you out there watching or listening, remember, you are loved.